So March 1st this year and every year marks the anniversary of beginning the transformation. It's a special day for me, March 1st, is because it's when put the fucking pedal to the metal and just started going for it. Just started going for this journey of self optimization, getting the help that I needed to help achieve this burgeoning feeling in my intuition, which I now recognize as my gut and my intuition, about being capable of more. And you probably know me because of how much I've transformed, and that's why you're part of this podcast now. Or maybe you're just a new listener, which is fucking fantastic. And hello and welcome to the show. But it's really hard to explain how much has fundamentally changed about me, about my understanding of myself, and, the complete 180 that I have to life. And that's because of this constant self obsession with getting the most out of myself and just really following my gut about what I'm doing and what I'm capable of. And we all think about what we're capable of. When we all think we're capable of more, and we are, we absolutely all are. But there is this sense that we get held down by society, by the systems, the people that surround us, the environment that doesn't facilitate our individual capabilities. And I sort of talked about this a bit last week about just being the boxed in child and understanding and recognizing that the systems and the environment that we live in modern society does not facilitate our individual well-being. And that's something that I holistically believe in. Hence why I'm putting these systems and these things that I've worked at an individual level for me and putting them out into the world, because I believe what's good for me is what's good for you. We are both fragments of the collective, right? We all have this seed of individuality within ourselves, and that's something I thoroughly believe in. And we need to nurture that. We need to self-care, self-love, self-nurture, because really we're all just playing one-player games in life. Everything we know about the universe, everything we know about who we are as individuals is in our minds. And all we have is our minds. And within that mind is a system. That's why I'm obsessed about systems. Through our consciousness, we have been able to derive the systems and the processes that formulate this fabric of reality that we all live in. And why am I talking about this? Where am I going with this? I guess it's with the transformation, it's just been about applied consciousness and applied discipline in every single element of my life. I have been obsessively self-reflecting on, pivotal moments of my life, behaviors, personal critiques that are common. I'm very good at pattern recognition. That's the logical brain in me that is very good at logic and understanding patterns, and that's a really important skill to have. Because also, I'm a sensitive individual, a very highly sensitive individual. Unfortunately, that has been calcified and been damaged and had to protect itself through the harshness of the reality that we live in. And so, when people critique me, sometimes it fucking hurts, but often it doesn't. And that's the real polarity that I have in my own head, is that part of me is an extremely sensitive individual. That is the hurt child. But then also part of me is this incredibly driven individual that wants the feedback, that loves getting better at things. And I think that is the non-hurt child inside me. Because, like we talked about last week, that kid that wanted to answer all the questions and loved, knowing everything at school. It's a similar vein. It's the evolution of that. That's how I feel about it. So with that, self-obsession and this understanding that this is my life and mine to control and mine purely to experiment and iterate on within myself has put me on this journey of self-optimization. Now, so the ambition does take it to a certain place, which is fantastic, but there's two sides to every coin. So there is the dark side of this ambition and this drive is also this fear, this deep-seated fear of not being enough. I have battled low self-esteem for my entire life, and I still do up to, I'm still working on it now. So, and I've always felt like an outsider that didn't fit in, that I've always been on the outer. It's what makes me want to do comedy. It's what makes me an individual nowadays, something that I've embraced. But that doesn't mean that the negative association with that outsider's perspective and not being like I'm part of it, of part of the collective, hasn't hurt me and hasn't created that distance in my mind for, again, my entire existence up until a couple of years ago. So what's this journey? This journey of self-optimization is just me tinkering with myself. Me just going, all right, what are the things to aim for in life? How do I get there? And how do I build them? How do I get better? And again, through this process of working on myself, building myself up in every direction, getting help, getting mentors, getting guidance, and just being obsessed with it. I mean, I don't watch free-to-air TV anymore. I have very few distractions in my life that are not relevant to some aspect of self-improvement in my life. Right? The media that I consume, it's all philosophy, it's all business, it's comedy, it's things that I'm purely interested in. I don't pay attention to the news. I don't pay attention to politics anymore. I just don't give a fuck because I've recognized that it doesn't serve me anymore. Now, this degree of self-obsession does contain a degree of narcissism, or at least I fear that it does. But we are all a little bit narcissistic, and there is societally this massive dearth of self-care about putting ourselves too far into the needs of others and focusing too externally on the outside world to solve our problems when they are really all just within us. Sure, you need external elements like good food and sun, and there are, you need to cultivate an environment and inputs that facilitate our holistic health. But as far as making peace with your pain, reinforcing positive behaviors, reflecting on these memories and these stories that we tell ourselves, so much of that is just done in solitude. But of course, you need to also have mentors, guidance, people, right? I've got a tribe of mentors. I've got a tribe of people and resources that I've facilitated and cultivated over time to help coach me, guide me, give me external guidance, because there's so many elements of this self-actualization journey that you need to get out of yourself of. So many elements of the old you that your body is quite attached to, the ego is quite attached to in trauma, in your freeze responses, these things that paralyze us beyond what the intuition in our gut and this newer story that we're telling ourselves about ourselves to get better, so it doesn't necessarily hit the right way, and it doesn't necessarily undo that damage or recompartmentalize your thoughts and belief systems about who you are. And that's probably a good way to take this back, is one of the biggest learnings that I've had about this transformation process in the weight loss, in the wealth generation, in the creating business. It's all mental. It's all about your mindset. It's about your belief system because we are playing a one player game, but we also write the rules to our own game. And for the longest time, up until we have generated self awareness and cultivated a sense of self, those rules and those definitions have been coded into us by society, by our families, by the examples of others that we just absorb like sponges. But the constant battle every day, it's not the heavy weights, it's not trying to figure out how to make more sales. It's the belief system that you can do it. And it's not listening to the ego when you approach that next level, when you get to that level of discomfort, when you live at your edge. That's the constant battle. In every element of your life, you will face your ego over and over again. Why? Because as we walk into the unfamiliar, into the unknown, our egos hate that. And the function of the ego is to protect ourselves and guide the mind, or the brain rather, and the body into what is known. So at every level, your ego is going to cast aspersions externally into the world about the things that you cannot do or the reasons why you shouldn't do something. And they could just be fucking bullshit narratives. And most of it is the judgments of others. But if you do not listen to that, if you recognize and you get enough runs on the board of your successes, you can recognize that in the nature of your mind as it is what it is. That is the nature of your ego. Once you accept that, once you can appreciate it, you can step forward, you can grow, you can evolve. And yeah, the mental aspect, mental mastery is the battleground in every element of transformation. Like, it's ingrained into me to exercise 5 to 6 days a week now. It never used to be. No, actually, it used to be, but what happened was when you yo-yo and you go up and down in your weight, and you people that get fit and then get fat again, what they haven't done is change the mental procedures, stories, processes, triggers in our minds, or in our minds that preclude eating unhealthily, right? I'll give you a perfect example. I used to eat to self-comfort, to self-soothe, because my family environment was not great. Once I got out of that environment and I recognized that it is a trigger point, it is up to me to, change that narrative and recognize that narrative, change it, blunt it, reduce it, right? That people don't understand that about themselves because that is often an impulse, and that impulse hijacks their executive forebrain thought, the higher self. That is where the best part of ourselves, when we think about our highest ideals and our most capable selves, most of that function sits in the executive brain, in the forebrain. But unfortunately, our trauma responses, our triggers, things that have wounded us, they sit in the older parts of our brain, the amygdala, the reptilian brain, the monkey brain. We've talked about that, but it's worth reiterating. These are the things that hold us back from that higher ideal. So what's next in the transformation? I just keep fucking going. The physical systems, they're optimized. The mental is a constant battle. I will be constantly mentally battling myself, challenging myself every single day because, to get from this mindset to go from, like, say, a 6 to a 7-figure salary requires a different mindset, requires a different version of you. The mindset that goes from, being an employee to self-employed, that requires a different mindset, a different perspective, a different operating system. So understanding more broadly, I will be constantly challenging my mind, and wherever my mind goes, the body follows. That's the biggest takeaway from this transformation, is that you are only really battling yourself, and then in the external world, you are figuring out what are the little tinkers and the tools and the processes that will enable the things that you reinforce your identity or your goals towards. And yeah, what am I working on now from a transformational perspective? Right now, it's financial and sexual systems is what I'm working on right now. I'm sitting back. I'm learning from other people about business in the digital world. I know a lot about traditional business, but I don't know much about digital business. I'm sitting back, learning from others, learning a new system, downloading that into my brain, building towards independence, building towards a skill set and a mindset that allows me to survive as an individual and create abundance in this new creative digital economy. That's what I'm aiming for. From a sexual perspective, right now I'm working on unpacking a lot of shit from my childhood. I did not realize until I went to therapy, and I've had these constant issues with anxiety, sexual performance, all that sort of stuff, how much I have to unpack and how much pain and shame I have to undo. So it's taking a lot of work at the moment to optimize that. And that is something I'll definitely be talking about when it's ready. It's still early days talking about, sexuality. I've sort of talked about kink and dominance a little bit in the pod, but I'm too early in the game in that system to be adding much value right now. I could talk about my process, sure, but right now it's still probably a little bit too raw to be sharing, but I'm sure I'll get there at some point. My broader vision for this podcast is to really just share every degree of my life with you guys, because I'm sure it's helpful. Because, again, the problems that I've faced and that I'm solving, I'm sure people just like yourself have asked the question, too afraid or too ashamed to address it, or you just value what I have to say, which I appreciate. So here's the thing as well with the transformation. I put out this post on March 1st. I took myself out to a nice dinner to sit back and appreciate me, how much I've done for myself. If you haven't seen the post, let me just talk you through what I've done in the last 3 years. Okay. And I'm just reading from the list here. In the last 3 years, I have lost 15 kilos in 16 weeks during the first lockdown. I have optimized my sleep and my diet and my exercise to get me to a regular 10% body fat, which is abs. I've doubled my testosterone naturally. I've doubled my income into the top 3% of earners in Australia. I've founded 2 businesses. I've produced dozens of comedy shows. I even ran a queer comedy show as a straight cis man. I've been recognized as a cultural leader in one of Australia's biggest brands, Telstra. I DJ'd for the first time. I played bass live for the first time in 10 years. I started this podcast. I've become a better son, a better brother, a better friend. I've supported many others throughout their own growth journeys, and I have connected to a higher power. And through this 3 years, through this self-inflection and self-reflection, which has been very intense, I have found discipline. I've recognized my core emotional wounds. I have diagnosed and managed my ongoing anxiety. I've understood the depth of my traumas, learned to love myself properly, fight the war of shame, still do every day, dropped my negative self-talk by 99%, and really just found an appreciation for my own space. I found purpose, meaning, and I found happiness. I've created this abundant mindset. I've healed lots of my wounded inner child, trusted my intuition, grown every day, made a friend of my mind, and learned to put myself first. I've overcome in the last 3 years being made redundant, a ruptured bicep tendon, numerous setbacks, multiple anxiety attacks, a childhood of significant trauma and neglect, low self-esteem, and the shadows of poor leaders. And that sounds like a fucking lot to be doing in 3 years, but honestly, I think there's a degree of you as an individual, if you sat back and really thought about the good things that have happened in your life in that time, you would have a fucking few wins as well. And that's the problem, is that we're so focused on the negative instead of the positive. We always think about what's wrong in our lives instead of counting the fucking wins. And that's all I've done, is just counted all the wins that I've had. And I'll tell you right now, it's difficult to put that out into the world. It's difficult to celebrate myself because of what I talked about last week, about this idea that I stand out from the crowd and I want to talk about it and I want to acknowledge myself, but it feels egotistical as fuck. It feels like I'm showing off or I'm bragging, because that's what was thrown at me as an individual when I was young, that, yeah, I do enjoy loving what I've done for myself, but there is still, yeah, just these kids or this hurt old mindset of people dragging me down for doing so well. Now, I recognize now that's a hater's mindset, right? Because when I think about from an abundant perspective, I love seeing other people's wins. I love seeing people's success, their growth. It fuels me. Watching other people succeed is one of my greatest joys in life. Being able to facilitate that is one of my greatest joys in life. So even if it happened without me, the fact that people are putting themselves out there, putting themselves in the firing line, being that tall poppy, taking that risk, a healthy environment encourages that. Because we understand innately how much of ourselves we are holding down. How much of ourselves we're holding back to the opinions of others. And we've all felt small when we know we have done better than what we're being recognized for. Or we at least want to be recognized for. So it's still, like, it gets easier every year to sort of look back and talk about my successes. But, it's something I still fight, right? I'm fighting the wiring constantly. It's what I said before. I'm constantly fighting the wiring of yesterday. That shit does not disappear once you've hit a level of success, once you've climbed a chunk of the mountain. Yes, you're up there and you can appreciate what you've done, but there is still a lot of healing of the old and, the stories that we've told ourselves for so long. It's hard to undo 20 plus years in a couple of years, right? It gets lesser, sure. Like I talked about there, my negative self-talk and my self-criticism has significantly dropped, but it still sits there, right? Deep cuts take a long time to heal. But that's it, You got to keep healing. It's not one and done. It's not a Band-Aid, right? Flesh, chick stick scars, looks cool, heals a few weeks, few months, if you're me. The emotional stuff, that can be your entire life, depending on how bad it is and how advanced the treatment you've taken yourself to get it done, right? I can't think of anyone, or not that I know of anyone, that has completely healed their traumatic or core wounds. I mean, if there are stories, I'd love to fucking hear about them, right? So it's a journey. I'm not done. I never will be done. I just iterate day by day, and it's been fucking amazing to date. And I hope that this gives you a little encouragement and, a little inspiration to go out and just invest in yourself. That's really what I've done the most, is I've bet on myself and invested in myself, and it has been the biggest payout ever. It will continue to keep paying out because the systems that I create now are wealth for my own well-being, my own financial freedom, achieving the things that I want in life, not achieving what other people want in life. Fuck that. I've done that for other people. So I want to get out of fucking working for a corporation. I'm sick of living other people's dreams.